Hi guys. So I put out the call for your questions, wildlife or photography related, and I'm pretty overwhelmed by the response. So thank you so much. You guys really came to the party. So I've got a few here and I'm going to answer some questions, all different places as I go along while I'm working and traveling. So just to kick things off, I've got a few that I'll start with. So yeah, let's get into it. Action! Oh my god, that could be an understatement. My advice is don't get bitten before you get a photograph. Okay, so probably the most common question that comes up is, how do I get to do what I do? And I'm so lucky to be able to do what I love, which is basically I travel around to a lot of places and I take photographs and film. So that can be for various clients, it can be for myself. These can be charitable work. I do a lot of volunteer wildlife conservation related work, and that's something that's probably closest to my heart. The other thing is shooting for stock. So if I'm in an area and I have some time, whether that's between commissions, then yeah, I can go out and shoot video, shoot stills with the hope of selling those later. That might be prints, general photographic prints, that might be a fine art series that I'm working on. It could be video content, so for stock sales, that kind of thing. That isn't the bulk of what I do, and certainly not a substantial way of how I earn my living. So okay, let's see some of the questions that you've sent through. So I'll start with just the ones off Instagram for the moment. So I've got Monica Fritz. Now I apologise if I'm in advance if I'm not answering, sorry if I'm not pronouncing names correctly. So the question from Monica Fritz: how do I get to be working with my dream job? There's no blueprint, and it's a tricky one to answer, and it's a long-winded one to be able to do justice to the answer. So with that in mind, maybe one day I'll write a book. It's been quite the journey to get here. It has not been easy, but it also hasn't been terrible that I don't actually want to actually be here. So it's not something that I planned for though, so that's where it gets a little tricky to answer the questions where if you want to try to replicate that. I didn't set out to do what I'm doing, and for me I was working as a photographer. So to start from the very beginning, and I'll try to keep it short and sweet for you, I originally started out as a graphic designer, progressed to an art director. I've always had a love of animals, so that was a given. And growing up as a kid, I tossed up between, do I want to be a marine biologist, do I want to be a vet? I was really into graphic design and art, so I didn't want to be a designer. And obviously I went down the path of graphic design after high school and that kind of thing. And I actually spent about 9 years working in that industry, and I did love it, but as things progressed, I happened to get a camera for the business that I was working with at the time, and I started going out on weekends and doing wildlife photography, and also photographing my own pets. I used to also keep reptiles as pets when I was back in Australia. I'm a huge reptile fan. So I would take pictures of my reptiles, then it progressed to taking pictures of other people's reptiles, then it progressed to shooting for reptile magazines and other people's commercial animal collections. From there, I started to develop a bit of a style, but that was actually more studio style work. So maybe a lot of you, my newer followers, don't know, because majority of the work that I do now is natural light wildlife content. But I do shoot animals and wildlife in studio or a studio style, full shebang, lighting, white backgrounds, that kind of thing. And that's a style that I do really, really like. It's very challenging, but I love the results. So it is actually something that I want to pick up again here in Africa, and I'll see if I can get I've got some of my lighting equipment out from Australia. I need a few more bits and pieces, and then we'll see. So I actually ran a pet photography business in Australia for about 7 years called Wet Nose Photos, and I had two photographers on staff that would shoot in different cities for me as it grew, and that was an amazing just experience to basically get paid to go and frolic with pet dogs mostly, and definitely some cats, and spend 2 hours running around having fun and taking pictures for their owners. My style was very natural, candid, outside in the park, at the beach, that kind of thing. It wasn't sort of posed pet stuff. So that actually also helped to lay the foundations of learning and practicing to shoot animals, that are, subjects that are running around and, tracking and at speed, and things like focus tracking and anticipation and exposure, getting that correct even though your direction is changing all the time. So you might be shooting into the sun and all of a sudden you're shooting, with it behind you. So really, really good foundation, and I definitely recommend that as a way to practice. You might think, I want to be a wildlife photographer, I've got nothing to focus on, I've got nothing to photograph, but actually you do. I mean, everything lays the foundation. There's birds out there, I promise you. It doesn't matter if you live in the city. There are animals out there and you can find them, and pets are an excellent way to start, and especially if you're just starting out, because dogs, for example, you can often work with them more than you can obviously with wildlife, in that you can use treats, you can use toys. I used to have a squeaky attached to my camera when I did dog shoots, so that if I wanted to get their attention, I'd be ready to shoot and I would squeak above the camera, and all of a sudden I would get their eye contact, and of course the ears would prick. So there's little things that you learn along the way, and especially you can progress to then working with movement. Let the animal do what it wants, and practice on capturing that, and capturing and your composition, that kind of thing as well, so that when you do get out into a situation where you're in the wild or you're dealing with wild animals, you have that foundation and that experience as well to miss less shots. We can't get all of them, and I'm the first to admit that I miss plenty of shots out there. I mean, the things that I get to see are amazing, and the percentage of what I capture versus what I see, I don't know, but it's definitely not 100%. So yeah, something to keep in mind. And if wildlife photography is something that really interests you, definitely take that as a starting point. So and that's how it progressed for me. I've been shooting professionally with a specific focus on animals for 12 years. But over that time, it's such a niche industry, and it's very hard to earn a living this way. So I had to diversify, and I still have to diversify. How I do that now is different to how I did when I started out. So maybe I'll tap onto that in another question session, and maybe a blog post. We'll see. I could just go on and on about it, and I don't want to bore you guys too much. So so I've been in Africa for a bit over 2 years. So in terms of career-wise, I've been shooting a lot longer than what I have been here. But for the bulk part of it, and for most of you guys, you probably know my volume of work from this continent. So okay, let's have a look at another question. I've got my iPad over here that I'm taking a peek at, so let's see what else we've got. Okay, so Hannah 7400 is also saying, I want to get into photography, specifically wildlife like you, and I was wondering what college did you attend? And I do get this question a lot as well. What photography college or what university or what course did I do? And for me, I didn't do any. I'm self-taught, but in saying that, self-taught, it's a funny term, and it implies that everything I've ever learnt is purely of my own volition, and that I've never been influenced by anyone else, and that's categorically untrue. And for any person that's self-taught, that is also untrue. It's self-taught is more about, I didn't specifically do a photography course. I didn't do a wildlife photography course. I didn't go to a university or a college, that kind of thing. I learnt by getting out there, doing it, making mistakes, researching. So I'm reading other people's photography how-to books. I'm reading blog posts. I'm reading, whatever I can get my hands on, basically. As I was learning, just absorbing as much information as I could, putting that into action, getting out into the field, getting to that point where it's the aha moment. Okay, this makes sense. I've read it, now I've done it, it makes sense. And then, you can learn and move on from there. It's also, YouTube videos. The other thing that I used to do as well, especially when I was learning to develop a style, because that takes a long time. I've been shooting as a job for 12 years, but I feel like it probably took me the first 5 or 6 to develop the style that I have now. You start out, and honestly, there's so many options. Maybe you don't know, you're still finding your way, you don't really know what it is that you like so much, and that will progress over time. You can't force that. So for me, that did take a while, but one of the great ways of doing that is find work of other people that really stands out to you. So, and there'll be more than one. You can't just go and copy someone's style. You need to go and develop your own. But find the stuff that appeals to you. Then break down why. Why does it appeal to you? Is it the color? Is it the composition? Is it the angles? Is it the subject? All these things come into consideration. Is it the way someone shoots? Is it, backlit all the time or mostly, or how, do they light their stuff? So many different options, and that's something to consider. So, it could also be post-production. It could be a combination. Usually it will be a combination of various things. And what I used to do is find work of photographers that I really liked, and it didn't necessarily have to be wildlife photography. It could have been a style, of photography that I liked, and has influenced me as I've come along, and maybe and then applied to what I shoot. So from there, I would then reverse engineer. So you can look, especially in terms of lighting, and this maybe applied more when I was shooting studio, but you can look at an image and you can reverse engineer how the lighting was done. And to do that, if there's eyes, where's the catch light? You can see where the catch light is coming from. Is there some fill light coming in? Where are the shadows going? These are all telling you where the lighting is, whether it's harsh, lighting, whether it's soft lighting, etc. And then as you learn, these sorts of things will make more sense as well. The key is getting out there and practicing. You can't read a book on photography and then go out in the field, and especially in wildlife photography, and then, just do it. You need to practice. You need to make mistakes, learn from them, practice. And the beauty of digital photography these days is that you get immediate feedback. Back in the film days, we shoot, we don't know what we're getting, and then by the time a film is processed, we've forgotten half the settings that was used, or how the lighting was, or all these things. So now you can literally get immediate feedback. You can make an adjustment on the camera, change something, take another picture, and right there in front of you is exactly what the difference is. So it's a super quick way of learning if you take notice. So here's the other thing. Being self-taught, whether you go to college for it or a course or self-taught, It doesn't matter. It's different things are right for different people. When it comes down to wildlife photography though, definitely there's a lot of options to get out there. They might be short workshops. I mean, I will be in Mauritius in a couple of weeks to run a 2-day workshop. Sometimes I'll do 6-day workshops, sometimes I'll do 19-day expeditions. So, I mean, I've done half-day workshops and talks. It varies. So there's a lot of options out there for people to learn, you know, from a mentor, someone that's experienced, get some tips and tricks. If you don't have access to that, like I said, the internet, the world is your oyster. The information, I promise you, the information is out there. You just need to look for it and find it. So as much as it's great to ask questions, and I can't answer everyone's questions, and especially when it comes to specifics, the answers are out there. You need to go look for them, and you need to get out there and practice. Be proactive about it. So, but when it comes to wildlife, like I said, and I go through this also a little bit in my book, my wildlife photography how-to book, and that is fieldcraft. Fieldcraft is very, very important. It's one of those things that's quite specific to this type of photography as opposed to other forms of photography, and that is you need to learn animal behavior. You need to understand your subject. So just like if I'm doing pet photography, I need to have, you know, an affinity with pets. I mean, it's going to come through in your work if you're photographing dogs and you don't like them. I mean, why would you do it otherwise? So, you know, if you want to get into wildlife photography, I'm assuming there's a grounded passion there for it anyway. So then you need to elaborate on that. You need to get experience. You need to work with animals. Where I started out in that aspect is I actually was working with animals long before I picked up a camera. So I volunteered at wildlife sanctuaries back in Australia. That progressed into becoming a volunteer wildlife carer, which is basically, you know, if you have a wild animal that you find injured or comes to your backyard, you know, you call someone to come and get it, that kind of thing. And so I would get a lot of wildlife call-outs and injuries. I focused on reptile rehabilitation, reptile lover, mad, crazy reptile lover. So I would still do normal call-outs, so, you know, things like birds, you know, fly into a window, possums, all sorts of things in Australia that can come up. I would still go to that call out, and then I would help the animal in the situation, and then I would either release it if it was fine, I would take it to a vet if necessary, or else to a carer that's more specific for that type of animal. And as I said, if it was reptile, then I would be the one to, if it was injured and need rehabilitation, then I would take it, do that rehabilitation, and then the release. So that all, you know, provides experience as well. And then again, getting out there. If you want to be into wildlife photography, if you want to do that as a job, and it's hard. It's hard to do it consistently. Be prepared, especially at the beginning. Be prepared to diversify. Don't say, you know, I only take pictures of animals, I'm not doing anything else. I did not get here with that attitude. I photographed food, corporate, industrial, anything that's going to pay the bills. I did it, and I gained experience by doing it to get to the point where I am now. So, you know, you have to set the ego aside and earn a living. Like, I mean, at the end of the day, if you're doing it for a hobby, great, no problem. Do your job and enjoy it. Just get out there when you can, as an amateur photographer, as a hobby, and just enjoy it. But if not, then yeah, you need to be prepared to put in the hard yards and the hard slog. But any experience or opportunity that you can get to engage with wildlife, to gain experience with wildlife, take it, do it. That's going to be a huge help, because to be a great wildlife photographer, not only do you need to understand the boundaries of wildlife, how far you can, you know, push those boundaries or where those boundaries are without stressing the animal, without pushing the animal, and also you need to be able to anticipate behavior so that you can capture those exceptional moments. That's very much key. So I think I have rattled on for plenty of time now. We might leave it there, and I'll pick up a few more of your questions wherever else I am on this beautiful continent. Just in case anyone is interested, at the moment I'm in beautiful Zululand, which is the KwaZulu-Natal region of South Africa at the moment. So I'm here on assignment. I've just wrapped up shooting for a wonderful organisation called Wild Tomorrow Fund, and then I'm shooting some stuff for Wild Aid, and then after that a commercial job. So and then after that I'm in Mauritius and all sorts of places. So it's going to be an exciting year. I hope you'll stick with me to enjoy the adventure as well, because there's some pretty cool stuff coming up this year. Not the least of which is going to be Svalbard in July, I think. So I'm going to try and get some polar bears and seals and ice caps and beautiful stuff like that. So that's going to be a little bit different. There's some exciting stuff coming up, so stay tuned.